Hello and welcome back to the simulated 2024 F1 World Championship. This is round number 11 of 24 from Spielberg in Austria. We're in the middle of a triple header in Europe, and to make things even better, the sprint weekend has returned. On the plus side, I do like the Red Bull Ring as a track, so I will tolerate a sprint race this time. Here's how the driver standings shape up after last time out at Spain. Yuki Tsunoda's lead in the championship has diminished to just 5 points ahead of Leclerc in second, with Hamilton moving back up into the top 3. Verstappen's not too far behind in 4th, with Alonso remaining in 5th, although behind him, Norris is starting to close in the gap. Norris's teammate Oscar Piastri follows in 7th, with Perez, Sainz and Ricciardo completing the top 10. As for the constructors, the top 6 are separated by only 42 points, with RB being only 2 points in the lead of the championship ahead of Ferrari. Red Bull remains in P3 with Mercedes 18 points behind in P4. Aston Martin and McLaren are also separated by just 2 points, before there's quite a large gap to Alpine in P7. Sauber are 1 point behind in 8th, Williams are only 3 further back in 9th, and Haas are languishing in last with only 19 points to their name. Compared to the actual standings, Verstappen increases his lead of the championship to 69 points, nice, ahead of Lando Norris, who jumps Leclerc into P2. Sainz follows his teammate in P4, with Perez falling even further back in 5th. Piastri's gap to the 2 Mercedes behind him has shrunk considerably, but he remains in P6, with Russell still ahead of his teammate Hamilton. Alonso and Tsunoda continue to round up the top 10. As for the constructors, Red Bull's lead to Ferrari has extended once again to 60 points, with McLaren slowly catching up to the Scarlet Cars in P3. Mercedes solidified their P4 status with a very healthy gap to Aston Martin in P5. RB remains in 6th, with Alpine jumping Haas up to 7th with another double points finish. Williams stay in 9th and Sauber are still yet to get on the board. Now it's time to find out who will be racing as for the Austrian GP. Hamilton has been removed from the wheel, meaning that half the drivers had now been used and removed from the wheel until later in the season. With 10 drivers left, let's see who we shall be racing as around the Red Bull Ring. And the wheel chooses Hamilton's former teammate Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber. Sauber's simulated season is going considerably better than their real one, with Bottas managing a podium last time in Spain. Can the upward trend continue? It's time for the Austrian Grand Prix.
Hello everyone, welcome to Austria. It is a short track, it is high speed, it is exactly what we enjoy for qualifying.
So here we are, Valtteri Bottas in the Kick Sauber car. Not exactly a fan of the streaming service Kick, but nonetheless we have to deal with it. As we move straight to sprint qualifying number 1, we actually had the proper race format now since we're on the new game. So I'd have to do some weird stuff to mimic the sprint qualifying instead of, actually having the sprint qualifying. But nonetheless, we set our lap time in the SQ1 is good enough for the top of the timings. And we lost from Q1 Daniel Ricciardo, Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, Lance Stroll and Logan Sargent. Also, another weird thing is the fact that they don't follow the rules of sprint qualifying properly, as in they should all be using medium tyres in SQ1 and SQ2. There's a patch coming out for that. Should be out by the time this video comes out, but I did record this before the patch came out, so people are just using whatever tyres they want for SQ1 and SQ2, I guess. But nonetheless, we are following the rules, go us, as we head to the top of the timings in SQ2 as well. And we've lost from SQ2 Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Zhou Guanyu, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lewis Hamilton. We've lost a Ferrari, a Red Bull and a Mercedes all in SQ2. Very surprising stuff indeed. Maybe not for Perez's case, but it's kind of odd that the last four people on the timing board all were on soft tyres, which should have been faster, but they weren't. Maybe that's their penance for breaking the rules. Nonetheless, we're on SQ3 now, which we can use soft tyres for. In fact, we're forced to use soft tyres for. As we get a little squirrely out of turn 1, which may compromise our lap time here. We go through turn 2, which I still don't think is a turn, but F1 says it's a turn, so I have to deal with it. Going into turn 3, which is probably my weakest corner of this track. You're going to see that a lot later on in this video, but nonetheless, we did set a purple Sector 1 despite our moment through turn 1. Sector 1 literally only being that one heavy braking zone, that one corner. I still was able to set a purple Sector 1, so just shows you the pace of the other cars. Again, the qualifying pace of the AI is not great compared to their race pace, so I usually kind of end up bossing qualifying, and then the race is somewhat harder. Well, not somewhat, it is harder, which I kind of prefer over the previous game, which was the opposite way of things. Nonetheless, come out last corner, another moment in the last corner, but nonetheless, we had a very good lap time. We set purples in Sector 1 and Sector 2, and we do end up being on sprint pole, which sets us up very nicely for the weekend, I think. So yeah, we got Bottas in P1, nearly a second ahead of Max Verstappen in P2. Alonso P3, Lando Norris in P4, Albon 5th in the Williams, very good result for him in sprint qualifying. Carlos Sainz in the sole remaining Ferrari is 6th, George Russell in the sole remaining Mercedes is 7th, Ocon is 8th, Piastri is 9th, and Pierre Gasly rounds up the top 10. So there we go, sprint qualifying is done, the first of 2 qualifying sessions is done. So now it's time for the Austrian Grand Prix Sprint.
Welcome to today's sprint. This is shaping up to be another fantastic weekend. Seven rights and just 3 left-handers make up the 10 corners of this high-speed circuit. Turn 2 is flat out, a left-hand kink into the uphill braking zone of turn 3. Turns 1, 3 and 4 are all potential opportunities to overtake. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Valtteri Bottas lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Fernando Alonso, Norris, Albon, Sainz, Russell, Ocon, Oscar Piastri, Gasly, Leclerc, Perez, Joe, Tsunoda, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Stroll, and Logan Sargent. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We will soon find out. Welcome to the commentary box. I'm Alex Jakes. Alongside me is Anthony Davidson. So, a sprint race today, and that means lights to flag, no stops. And how is that going to affect the driver behind the wheel?
Absolutely. So for today, there's no pit stop, or shouldn't be a pit stop anyway, if things go right, and you can forget about strategy. You're just driving today as fast as you can, make those overtakes if you need to, and that's what a sprint weekend's all about.
So here we are on the grid for the sprint. Looks like we're making no stops. I don't know why we'd make a stop in the sprint. I don't know what the ultimate strategy is on about. I assume it wants me to go really, really fast at the first stint just to cover off the stop. But we're not going to do that. We're going to stick with the 0 stop and just go on the mediums. And I would guess that everyone else is going to do the same. And yes, they are. Everyone on the mediums, everyone on new mediums for the sprint. So pretty much it's just very, very much flat out, lights to flag, as they said. And yeah, hopefully it'll be a fun little sprint. Sprints tend to be a mixed bag. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. We shall see how this one goes. But nonetheless, we are starting on sprint pole. We got Verstappen alongside us. I still think Verstappen's AI in this game is way too overpowered, but he is the highest rated, so I guess it kind of checks out. But nonetheless, we take our spot on the grid. Very good stuff. So we're waiting for the other cars behind us. Finishing up with Logan Sargent in the Williams, who is just parking himself on the grid there, next to Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, who is, not surprisingly, down in 19th. As we move now to 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the sprint. Verstappen getting a better start than us. Going into turn 1, but I'm still kind of alongside, so I brake a little bit later, go around the outside, he slows down, I regain the lead of the race, but he will have the slipstream going down into turn 3, and he's actually still alongside us as we go up the hill now at the end of Sector 1. And Alonso now on the inside of the pair of us, 3 wide into turn 3. We barge wheels going around the corner, and it's still 3 wide coming out of the corner. Very, very exciting start here. Banging wheels once again, taking some underbody damage. I do get more straight line speed. I do activate the battery. I try to go around the outside. Verstappen still holds on and eventually gives up the position. Although he did try to go around the outside now into turn 6 or 7. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's turn 6. But I do get the position. And Alonso actually gains the position on Verstappen as well. Very exciting stuff at the beginning of the sprint there. Bottas, Alonso, Verstappen, all 3 wide for near on the whole sector. But I do gain the lead. And we move now onto the end of lap 1 into lap 2 as I try to gain a second ahead of Alonso, which I haven't done. Very nearly, but I haven't done. As we move down, still on lap 1, Russell and P5 actually locked up. We didn't see it before. The camera kind of actually panned away, but Russell locks up going into turn 5 or turn 4. I can't remember which one it is, but he loses all the positions. He did start very well in the top 10, but now he's all the way down in last as Verstappen now tries to make a move on Alonso around the outside of turn 1 at the beginning of lap 3, and actually makes the move stick. Alonso now down into P3 again, Verstappen back up to P2, and he'll probably end up charging towards me, who has gained over a second, and Alonso now on lap 4 locks up going into turn 1, and ends up actually slamming into the side of Carlos Sainz, his compatriot, losing a piece of his front wing, which is definitely going to compromise his performance. Very silly mistake there from Alonso. We see 2 mistakes now from the AI with Russell and now Alonso. Alonso not losing as many places, but he has lost a piece of his front wing. Again, that will compromise his performance. As we see Albon now on lap 9, shaping up a move on Norris in P3. Albon having a very good sprint race so far. As he goes around the outside of Norris into turn 3, he should have the traction coming out the corner, but again, Norris is quite fast in his McLaren. He gets the DRS. And he's just keeping himself ahead, and indeed he does. Albon nearly making the move stick, but Norris keeping himself up in P3. As we see Sainz there, who also locks up into turn 1, and actually slams into the side of his teammate Leclerc, but he doesn't lose any bit of his front wing, thankfully. So no harm done there for Sainz, except for the fact that he's lost a few positions now. So Sainz following his compatriot Alonso into turn 1, locking up and losing a couple of positions. Alonso actually still in P5, surprisingly, and actually up to P4, so maybe his front wing damage isn't as bad as I thought it was initially. But nonetheless, Alonso probably should have been in P3 or maybe P2, but silly mistake from him and for Sainz as well. As we now look behind us and see Verstappen now, who has closed in on us, trying to make a move around the outside of turn 4. And we just cover him off for now, but I have a feeling this is going to be a very recurring trend for the rest of the race. Very unfortunate for us. As we move on to lap 18, we do have a little bit of a moment coming out of turn 1 again, just like in qualifying. This allows Verstappen to get a much better run on us going into turn 2 and turn 3. And he actually makes the move going into turn 3, except I brake a little bit later just to keep side by side with him, but he has much better traction coming out the corner, but we do get the DRS because we were behind them at the DRS detection point, which allows us to have more straight line speed going into turn 4. We try to go around the outside, but Verstappen still persistent, still trying to keep his nose in it, but we have the inside going into the next corner, and that allows us to keep the lead. As you heard on my engineer, Piastri has an issue with his car, so unfortunate for him. He's in P7, but I don't think he's going to be P7 for much longer. Very sad for him, but McLaren should probably build their car better. As we see Zhou now, whose engine blows up, another team that probably should build their car better is our team Sauber today. But yes, Zhou out of the sprint with an engine that went pop really, which is probably going to ring alarm bells for us considering we're his teammate and all. But nonetheless, Zhou is out of the sprint. Hopefully he can get his car repaired for qualifying, which is next. So, yeah, very unfortunate stuff there for Zhou. As we move on now to the final lap of the sprint, we still got Verstappen hounding us behind, who's going to try probably make a move on this last lap of the sprint. I don't get any moments coming out of turn 1, but Verstappen doesn't have any moment either, and he got us again going up the hill into turn 2 and turn 3, but I decided to use the same strategy as I did before. keep myself behind at the detection point, which is that line right there. Keep on the inside, activate the DRS, use the battery, and that should keep Verstappen behind us. And indeed it does, going into the next corner. You can see Piastri now down all the way in 19th and last, which is very much a shame for him. Tsunoda actually overtaking Ocon there for the last of the points paying positions in the sprint. Very nice stuff. And Albon and Sainz also battling with each other for P4. We probably should be looking at those, but I forgot to record those, so you just got to use your imaginations. As we move on to the last part of the lap now, we do keep Verstappen behind us. My TV direction is probably just as good as the real thing, so at least this thing is realistic. We go for the last corner now, to the line. Bottas is the winner of today's sprint, getting maximum points. Getting maximum points in the sprint. So half the job done, but there's still half to go. Stroll is the driver of the day somehow. Don't know what he did. I guess he got to P10 from P19, which is not bad for a sprint, honestly. But after the sprint, we've got Bottas, who is the winner. Verstappen in second, Lando Norris in P3. Carlos Sainz holds off Albon for P4. Albon P5. Alonso P6, so front wing damage didn't affect him too much, but he will rue that mistake. Leclerc P7, and Yuki Tsunoda is the last of the points finishers in the sprint in 8th. Just behind him, Ocon losing out to Tsunoda. Stroll makes up the top 10. Gasly P11. Hamilton P12 from P15. Perez actually losing a spot from the sprint. He's down in P13. Daniel Ricciardo 14th. Nico Hulkenberg in 15th. Russell actually losing a lot of spots because of his mistake on lap 1. Ends up in P16. Sargent P17, Magnussen is 18th, and Oscar Piastri, thanks to his engine issues, is the last of the classified finishers in 19th. And we had one retirement, which was Zhou Guanyu. And that's the sprint done. Very exciting sprint indeed, but there's still plenty left to come. It's now time for the Austrian Grand Prix qualifying.
Hello everyone, welcome to Austria. It is a short track, it is high speed, it is exactly what we enjoy for qualifying.
So here we are back in the Sauber garage, I should say, for another qualifying session. As you can see, we can't go out yet because our body is damaged. We did have some underbody damage from the sprint, which means I don't know why they didn't repair it between the sessions, but maybe they ran out of time. But nonetheless, it wasn't too long, so we were able to get our underbody repaired and get out on track for a Q1 lap time. That puts us, no surprise, at the top of the standings. But again, that doesn't really mean much in Q1, it's just getting through. And we've lost in Q1 Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari is out in Q1. And then we had the Williams pair of Albon and Sargent making up the rear. But yeah, Sainz is the big shock in Q1. He didn't have a very great sprint. He did make that mistake going into turn 4, which is very unfortunate for him. As we move on to Q2 now, we actually set our lap time a little bit earlier in the session because of a threat of rain for later on in the session, which, spoiler alert, never really materialized. But nonetheless, we do set a lap time that's good enough to get us into Q3. And we've lost from Q2 George Russell, Zhou Guanyu, Esteban Ocon, Oscar Piastri, and Lewis Hamilton again in 15th place in the Mercedes. Both Mercedes and a McLaren out in Q2. Very shocking there from the Mercedes team, and Piastri, I'm sure, will be disappointed, especially after having the engine issues in the sprint. As we move on to Q3 now, and I guess I misremembered because the rain did actually hit going into Q3, but it wasn't wet enough for intermediates yet, so we basically got out very quickly to set our lap time. And yes, it's not going to be the greatest lap time in the world because of the slippery surface, but it's definitely better than using the intermediates later on. So hopefully we can set a good enough lap time for pole, and hopefully no one does jump us in this changeable conditions, we shall say. As we move on to turn 4 now. Again, it is quite slippery, a bit of understeer there coming out the corner, but we do hold on to the car, moving into turn 5 and 6, I think. I think it might actually be turn 6 and 7. I might be wrong, though. because this is turn 8. Yeah, this is, that was turn 6 and 7, because there are 10 corners. I don't know why there's 10, there should be like 9 or 8. As we hit the curb, getting a little bit squirrely coming out of turn 9, turn 10 a little bit squirrely as well, but we do hold on. We head to the line now. We set a fastest lap time of 106.714. Is it good enough for pole? We shall find out momentarily as we skip to the end of the session. And yes, it is indeed good for pole. So we take pole for the main race with Alonso starting alongside us in P2, Verstappen in P3, Gasly in P4, Lando Norris in P5, Charles Leclerc in P6. Then we got the two RBs of Tsunoda and Ricciardo in 7th and 8th. Very good qualifying for them. Perez behind them, actually, funnily enough, in 9th in the main Red Bull team. And then Kevin Magnussen, who actually, I didn't realise, made it into Q3, rounds up the top 10 for Haas. So maybe they'll get some more points today. But nonetheless, qualifying is over. Qualifying is done. It's now time for the Austrian Grand Prix.
It is a warm welcome to Spielberg for another exciting Formula One Grand Prix, and just like all of the European races these days, so many fans have packed their way in at a great place for the race. We have wet conditions today, 10 corners out there for the drivers, 7 to the right and 3 to the left, making up a total distance of 2.6 miles. It is very easy to run wide, especially in these wet conditions. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Good job yesterday from Valtteri Bottas. The Finn starts from pole position, and Fernando Alonso completes the front row. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Gasly, Norris, Leclerc, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Perez, Magnussen, Russell, Joe, Ocon, Oscar Piastri, Hamilton, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Sainz, Albon, and Logan Sargent. Now, it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Welcome to the commentary box. I'm Alex Jakes. Alongside me is Anthony Davidson. Now, those final hours before a race, did you have a routine?
Well, for them, you've got your pre-race rituals that you go through. You see different drivers that, some have got their headphones on, they're listening to the music. Some drivers really absorb the energy from the crowd and they're there waving to them. Other drivers, they go within themselves. They chat to their engineers, absorbing that information, that vital information that you need to carry you through the race. And, those pre-race rituals are essential to making things systematic. We do a lot of Grand Prix in a season, and the more systematic you can be, the easier you are within that environment.
Alrighty, so there we go. We are on the grid. It's raining, but we're actually starting on dry tyres, surprisingly enough. I don't know what is happening here. I guess it's not raining enough for intermediates, but I don't know. It's making me start on the hards, which is very interesting, but I decided I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to go with the softs to start off with because of the slippery conditions. I know in slippery conditions... Oh, actually, do I start on the softs? Yes, I do. I do start on the softs. It says medians, but I kind of decide softs is probably better because of the slippery conditions. Slippery conditions definitely means soft tyres are probably for the best. I don't know why I'm doing here. Oh, I'm looking at the other strategy here to do 2 stops potentially. Having a look to see. I customized both, but I still had to go with the first strat. I don't know why I didn't select the second strat, but that doesn't really matter. As you'll see going into the race itself, everyone apart from me is starting on the hard tyres. So everyone going for the one stop. I start on the softs because, again, it is slippery. Soft tyres tend to work the best on the slippery surface. So we shall see how it goes. Again, apparently the rain is not heavy enough for intermediates, which is kind of weird. It's definitely confusing. I thought it was a glitch again where the game was like, no, you can't start on the intermediates, you have to start on dry tyres. But you'll see later on in the race that it's weird. Very weird, but spoiler alert for later on, I guess. But nonetheless, we line our way up on the grid again, once again on pole position. We got Alonso alongside us this time, Verstappen behind us in P3. And we've got the two Williams lining up at the back there, ready for 71 laps of the Austrian Grand Prix. Let's see how this main race goes compared to the sprints. We've got 5 red lights. And it's lights out, away we go. Very tentative off the start there for everybody. I actually do make a better start thanks to my soft tyres, so that means Alonso is nowhere near me going into turn 1. Gasly trying to jump Norris. Verstappen actually going around the outside of Alonso going into turn 1. And they are side by side once again, them two going into going into turn 3. I was asking my engineer about the tyres and the weather. But Alonso on the inside going into turn 3, but Verstappen has the traction coming out the corner, which means Verstappen is ahead of him going into the turn 4. But Alonso getting the slipstream, going around the outside into turn 4, trying to make the move stick, but again Verstappen has the inside. But they're still side by side going through turn 5 actually. This is a very competitive battle, very similar to what we saw in a sprint, except without me, because I'm kind of pulling away here. Alonso actually keeps P2. Ahead of Verstappen. Very good stuff there from the Spanish driver, showing his experience. Very good stuff as, yeah, we kind of decide to rump on ahead a little bit. We're over second ahead of Alonso, which allows us to be out of DRS range. So the soft tyres definitely working very well, but we don't know how well they're going to work for. As you may see from the left that Alonso is kind of tumbling down the order now. I don't know what's happened here, but now we're going to find out. Alonso still ahead of Verstappen going into the last corner, but he ends up misjudging his braking, going wide, and then going back on the track. He actually hits the side of Tsunoda, breaking off his end plate again, which means for both the races today, Alonso's ended up with a damaged front wing, and I fear this one is going to be more substantial damage than what he had in the sprint. So, unfortunate for Alonso, but it was his own mistake, and he rejoined very unsafely. And I feel like he's going to lose out because of that. As we move on to lap 3 now, I actually decided to make the call, and I figured, let's try the intermediates. So I'm coming in very early, making a very risky call, but I feel like the rain is just heavy enough that the intermediates will probably end up being faster than the soft tyres. So, even though I'm in the lead, I'm taking the biggest risk of all, and I'm slapping a set of intermediates on. And we'll see whether it works. I'm going to keep the eye on the tyre temps, because if this goes wrong, then those tyres are going to overheat very, very quickly. But I feel like it is the best option. But I am now at the back of the field, which means I do have to overtake everyone again, which is very unfortunate. But as you can see, I did set the fastest sector 3 on my out lap. So that's a good sign for us. That is a good sign that the intermediates are actually the faster tyre, which hopefully should play into our hands later on, as we see ourselves going out to turn 3 now, and everyone broke so early going into turn 3, which is very surprising, which allowed me to dive down the inside of Albon. I wasn't expecting to make the move on Albon, but everyone was braking so early going into the corner, it was actually very surprising. And again in this corner, Sargent braking so early, I slide down the inside, and I've already overtaken both the Williams within a couple of corners, which was very surprising. And as we move to the end of the lap, I'm now right on the back of Hulkenberg in P17. And I set the fastest lap of the race, a 1:13.038. So the intermediates are definitely the faster tyre at this stage of the race. But there is a catch. And that's the tyre temperatures. Because despite the intermediates being the faster tyre, as we see the cars going very slow through turn 3 again, I end up making a double overtake on Stroll and Sainz going into turn 3. But as you can see in the bottom right, the rear tyres are kind of going up in temperature, and they're fine right now. But as you can see, going through the lap, they're still going up. The tyre temperatures are still going up. So this could be an issue later on. We shall see. So we need to overtake these cars as quickly as possible, and I make a move on Hamilton going into the last corner, actually, funnily enough, moving up to P14. As you can see now, those rear tyres are starting to yellow up on the graphic. But they are still faster. As you can see, I actually make a triple overtake, nearly. A double overtake, at least, on Ocon and Piastri. Zhou actually hanging around the outside there, but we do have DRS. Zhou also has DRS. We do keep the inside going into the turn 4, and we do make the move on our teammate. We're now up to P11. And the overtakes don't stop there. We got Russell next, and at the end of lap 7, he's right there. We're right up on his gearbox. And we get a good traction coming out the corner with DRS, a little bit of battery as well. He also has DRS, funnily enough, but he tries covering off the inside. And I just say thank you very much, because he brakes very early going into turn 1. I actually go around the outside, going up to P10. And I actually end up being side-by-side with Perez going up the hill now at the beginning of lap 8. Moving up to P9. Hopefully, we shall see. But again, turn 3 isn't exactly being my strongest suit. But I do have the outside line, which hopefully should give me some traction, and indeed it does. And I end up in P9 with a good run on Magnussen and Alonso, who's still carrying front wing damage. We end up now going onto the grass because of Alonso kind of shoving us out there. I end up braking later thanks to my intermediate tyres. I kind of slide past both Magnussen and Alonso up into P7. So we are making a lot of moves. We made a whole load of moves in a few laps. So these intermediates are working well for us right now. But as you saw in the graphic earlier, they are starting to heat up, which is not ideal. As we see now on lap 10, we've got Verstappen and Norris, who have actually gained quite a distance ahead of the other cars. So we got these two cars now battling for the lead of the race. It's pretty much between Norris and Verstappen right now until we come back into the fold later, potentially, with our intermediate tyres. But Norris staying ahead of Verstappen for now, but Verstappen is definitely hounding him all the way. And Norris actually makes a mistake going into turn 3, which allows Verstappen to very easily slide on back through. And yeah, Verstappen had DRS, so not very good for Norris there. He did make a mistake. As we move now on to the lap before, actually. I kind of put these out of order. But Russell spins out on lap number 9 of 71. He makes another mistake, does Russell, which leads him down the pecking order. So Russell definitely not having a great weekend, getting knocked out in Q2, making a mistake in the sprint, and then making another mistake in the main race. And this one seems to be way more detrimental, as for some reason he reversed over the gravel. Had to reverse over the gravel just to get enough momentum to put him back on the track. So now he's down in last again, and 25 seconds behind P19. So not very good for him, and not very good for us. You can see the rear tyres are kind of screaming out in pain right now, but we are trying to make them work. We've got the two RBs of Tsunoda and Ricciardo in front of us, and Leclerc, and we try to get side by side with Leclerc going into turn 9. We actually do get our nose in it, which allows us to go around the outside of Leclerc, and we do make the mistake. We're up to P5 now. But we do make a little bit of an error coming out the last corner. The rear tyres definitely hampering our performance now, but we are pushing through the pain. And now we see the two RBs now going side by side into turn 1, which should allow us a good run out of the corner. And indeed it does. And we're right behind Ricciardo now, who also has DRS. We try to wiggle around, try to squirm our way around. It also gives Leclerc an opportunity to go side by side. So we're actually kind of going 3 wide into turn 3. I'm in the middle. I kind of get sandwiched, but I actually come out on top. So I end up in P4 ahead of Ricciardo, ahead of Leclerc. And now we got Tsunoda in front of us as we move on to lap 15. And I make the opportunity work. Go around the outside. Try to do the switchback actually, and it didn't really work out too well. But we still have DRS coming out of the corner, so hopefully we can make the move stick by the time we reach to turn 4. We pull out to the side. We're on the outside. Our intermediates give us a little bit of breathing room, although we do make a little bit of an error going for the corner, but Tsunoda gives us the room, and now we're up to P3. But again, as you can see, our rear tyres, especially the rear left, I should say, not looking very well. And obviously we've lost performance now, so the RBs are actually keeping up with us pretty easily. So I do make the call on lap 24 to go onto the dries. Our intermediate gamble didn't really work out too well. We did make a lot of positions as Tsunoda actually tries to make a move, and we do make contact going through turn 3 actually, but we do still end up ahead. But we are going to come in at the end of lap 24 to put on the dry tyres, put on the hards to the end of the race, and see how it goes. So the win's looking unlikely right now. My gamble didn't really pay off. I thought the inters would definitely last a lot more than they did. But considering how open the field is now and how much fresher tyres will be on with the hards, considering everyone else started on hards, hopefully we can make a few more positions before everyone else pits in for their one only pit stop. So We come out of the pits just behind Piastri, but ahead of Sergio Perez, so we're down to P9, so thankfully still in the points for now. But yeah, our intermediate gamble didn't really pay off in the end. We got to P3, but we couldn't make any progress towards Verstappen and Norris at the front, so at the moment it seems like it's going to be a straight fight between Verstappen and Norris for the win of the Austrian Grand Prix. Seems like a little bit of a repeat of the Spanish Grand Prix, but it was a bit more competitive. As we actually now die down the inside of Norris' teammate Piastri. We get a little bit out of shape going around the corner, but we do make ourselves up to P8. Very good stuff, and hopefully we can catch Magnussen and whatnot up ahead as we see Zhou now going through the last corner. And his engine lets go again, going down the main straight. So it's another retirement for Zhou, but he actually pulls along back on the racing line for some reason. Hulkenberg slams into the back of Zhou and also retires from the race. I don't know what Zhou was doing. He was pulling over to the side and then for some reason came back onto the racing line, which was very daft there from the Chinese driver. He was retiring. I don't get why he didn't just pull off to the side on the main straight, but now that's also caused Hulkenberg to be out of the race, and I'm sure there's going to be many discussions about that after the race. Very, very poor stuff there from Zhou. So yeah, we now got two drivers out of the race. And one of those drivers is Hulkenberg. We're actually chasing down his teammate Kevin Magnussen. And we do make a bit of a lunge down into turn 4 on lap 32. But with our fresher tyres, we have more commitment. And we end up into P7 now. We now got Gasly, Tsunoda, Ricciardo and Leclerc ahead of us in P6, 5, 4 and 3rd. I don't know why I said it like that. But we do get a big good run on Gasly coming out the last corner with our much fresher tyres, which gives us the inside line going into turn 1 on lap 33, and we do make the job, get the job done very easily as we actually collide with Tsunoda a little bit on turn 1, but no damage done. Tsunoda has DRS, Leclerc also has DRS, which means we should both be catching up to Ricciardo, and this is going to get very interesting as we go 3 wide into turn 3 again. I always seem to end up going 3 wide into this turn, but we don't actually make any move stick. They actually had much better traction coming out the corner. So I remain in P6 for now, behind Tsunoda and Leclerc. But hopefully we can make another move here, as we get a good run out of turn 4, going into turn 5 with 3 wide still with Tsunoda and Leclerc. And I try going out the outside of the pair of them. Tsunoda and I make contact. I go slightly wide because they kind of force me out. But I do make the move on Tsunoda at least. Leclerc actually holds on to P4, so the biggest loser there is Tsunoda, who lost a spot to me. I'm now up to P5, and hopefully we can get a good run on Charles Leclerc now, going out the last corner. In fact, we're going to make the move before the last corner. And there we go, we're up to P4 now. Our fresher tyres are definitely working out. As we move now right onto the back of Ricciardo in the other RB. Ricciardo having a very good race. In fact, both the RBs having a very good race. Although Tsunoda might be a bit disappointing considering his main championship rival Leclerc is in front of him. So I'm sure Tsunoda would definitely want to get ahead of Leclerc and keep his championship lead. As we move ahead of Ricciardo now, we're back up to the podium spots. And now our job is to try and close the gap to Verstappen and Norris. As we see Norris now pitting in ahead of Verstappen. Norris trying to do the undercut on Verstappen as he moves on to the medium tyres now. And out he goes. Very smooth pit stop there from the McLaren pit crew. And we do actually end up overtaking Norris, but Norris is going to be on much fresher tyres, so I doubt our lead is going to hold off very long. As we see now on lap 40, Verstappen now in the pits as well, so we do end up jumping both Verstappen and Norris. And we move back into the lead of the race, and technically we don't have to pit in again. But they're on mediums, and we're on used hards, so I'm not very optimistic of our chances here, going into lap 41. As there's a yellow flag on track, it looks like one of the Alpines has gone off the track, I don't know which one. But we'll see whether that clears up in time. We're going through turn 3. Norris and Verstappen behind us on much fresher tyres. They're probably going to close up on us within a few laps at the very least. As we see Leclerc Piastri in the pits, and we got a full course safety car coming out. Thanks to that Alpine going off the track. It's actually still trying to get back on the track, which explains a lot. We're actually catching up to the Alpine right now. Although it seems like the Alpine has actually got back on the track, which means probably not a good idea to put out the safety car. I think a VSC probably would have been better. But it actually gives us an opportunity for us to pit in for new mediums, and then hopefully we can keep up with the top two and maybe regain the lead properly, as we see Ocon, who turned out to be the one who spun. He actually ended up doing the same thing as Russell earlier and kind of reversing through the gravel trap. I don't know what the AI are doing with these gravel traps here in Austria. But Ocon losing a whole bunch of positions. But on the plus side, he is waiting for a safe rejoin, which is kind of detrimental for him because of everyone coming past. And for some reason, he actually ends up being ghosted and reversing on the track. I don't know what that's all about. But he is now in last place, so I don't know how Ocon didn't get disqualified for reversing on track. That is very dangerous behaviour there from Ocon. But nonetheless, he's back up and running. We do have a safety car, and we decide, as I said earlier, to come in the pits for a new set of mediums. So we're going to end up losing the lead to Norris and Verstappen again. We're going to end up in P3 ahead of Leclerc and Gasly. But we will be on the same tyres, which gives us a fighting chance for the win again. Safety car definitely bailed us out, because we definitely didn't deserve to be up there. I think P3 would have been on the cards for us, had the safety car not come out, considering the gap between me and Leclerc. But safety car happened. Probably shouldn't have happened, considering the incident in question. But nonetheless, we're back on the track now. And we're on medium tyres to the end of the race. So now our fights with Norris and Verstappen for the win. And don't forget that we still have a streak of 10 different winners in 10 races that we matched from a few years ago. So if we end up winning with Bottas, then that would be 11 different winners from 11 races, which would break our own record. So let's see if we can break the record. Norris and Verstappen have already won races before. So if any of them two win, then it would end up breaking the streak. If Bottas wins, the streak would continue. So hopefully we can make up the positions. As we do have a lap car of Esteban Ocon in front of us, Codemaster's still not programming the rule that allows lap cars to unlap themselves during the safety car for some reason. Still don't know why they haven't implemented that. I mean, F1 Manager has that implemented, so you know, get on that, Codemasters. I mean, you've got plenty of other things to worry about because this game is not good. But nonetheless, we restart on lap 47. We make our way past Ocon immediately, thankfully. So that does allow us to be on the back of Verstappen and Norris. No DRS on the first lap after the restart, of course. So it's pretty much even Stevens going up the hill. Norris leading from Verstappen. Verstappen looking to make a move going into turn 3. Does he make the move stick? Yeah, still by side coming out the corner. But I think Norris actually gets the better drive out of turn 3, so he does stay ahead of Verstappen for now. Verstappen now looking to go around the outside of turn 4, decides better of it, and Norris keeps the lead for now. But we move on to the next lap now, as we just set the fastest lap of the race. We're right behind Max Verstappen coming out of turn 1. We do have DRS, and Verstappen also has DRS, which puts Norris in a very dangerous predicament. As we go up the hill now into turn 3 again on lap 48. We go 3 wide for the lead into turn 3. I'm on the inside, Norris on the outside. Verstappen in the middle. Norris gets the better traction coming out of the corner, but I do get better traction than Verstappen coming out the corner, which allows me to get up to P2. Surprisingly, I'm pretty surprised that worked out. But Norris keeps the lead, and Verstappen ends up being the biggest loser because of that. So yeah, now we're at a P2, and I was thinking about what to do now because of basically you're going to see now Verstappen trying to make a move on me going into turn 3. And as I mentioned before, turn 3 is not my strongest corner, as you're going to see that very soon with Verstappen actually going around the outside there, going into turn 3, getting a much better drive. And because I was still behind Norris, once again behind Norris, I do get DRS which allows me to keep the position. I actually make a mistake though going into turn 4, which puts Verstappen out of sorts and actually allows Leclerc to dive down the inside and overtake Verstappen for P3. So a mistake by me causes Verstappen to lose out. I'm very sorry, Max, but I did outbrake myself going into the corner. But lap 60 now, we're looking at Gasly. Going through the last couple of corners, Gasly now locks up going into the last corner and also ends up rejoining unsafely and losing a piece of his front wing to Perez. So Gasly, not learning from Alonso's mistakes, has now ended up losing his front wing, which is definitely going to compromise him in the last 10 laps of the race. And he hooks up again going into turn 1, and so does Hamilton, allowing Stroll, Sainz and whatnot to get a run on them. What is going on with the AI today? So many mistakes going into turn 1 and turn 4. But it's allowing a lot of side-by-side action going into turn 3. We've got 3 different instances of side-by-side action as Gasly goes around the outside of Stroll actually and keeps on to P11. But he is out of the points now, and I don't think he's going to make any positions going further forward. As we see Stroll now trying to go around the outside of Gasly on turn 4. And Gasly, no, Stroll ends up. No, they're actually still side-by-side going into turn 6. And Stroll actually ends up making the move stick. Very good there from Stroll. Hopefully he can get her to the top 10, but I'm not too optimistic. Sainz is kind of running away right now in 10th. But as I said before, as we see Alonso now, who did start P2. And funnily enough, they never fixed his front wing, surprisingly, which I don't get. Aston Martin doing a very interesting strategy, and it hasn't paid off for them. But yeah, Alonso, a very disappointing race for him, down in P17. But as I said earlier, I was thinking about turn 3, and how I'm not very good about it. So I decided, in an interesting display of strategy, that I was going to stay behind Norris until a time where I feel like I could be comfortable taking the lead and keeping it. Because I feel like if I take the lead now, then Norris will probably we'll end up fighting each other for the entire race, and that will probably end up causing us both harm. So I decided to keep behind him until the last lap of the race, which sounds pretty cruel, I know, but I feel like this was the best strategy for us to win. So we're on the last lap now, going through the first corner. I take the DRS, put the full battery on, see if I can make the move into turn 3 with Norris. I decide to keep behind him going in. No, actually, no, I do not. I don't keep behind him. I probably should have done that because of our run out of turn 3. We don't have DRS going down into turn 4, and Norris does, so we need to use all our battery to keep ahead of him, and we do, thankfully. So that was a little bit of a slip up on my part, but thankfully it worked out, because thankfully I had enough battery. But we steal the lead from Norris in the last lap of the race. And with very few overtaking spots now available, it looks like we are going to take the win of this race, despite everything that's happened in this race. Going from the intermediates back onto the dries, the intermediate gamble didn't work out. Then we got the safety car, which played right into our hands. And in the end, despite everything that's happened in this race, and it's rained the entire time, by the way, we come for the final corner. It's going to be 11 different winners and 11 races. Valtteri Bottas wins the Austrian Grand Prix. Unbelievable stuff there from Valtteri Bottas. Norris probably going to be very angry with himself. He was holding on to the lead for the longest time, but he has to settle for second. And it's Sauber who win at Austria.
The Finnish driver will look up and see the checkered flag first. Valtteri Bottas takes the win.
And it's always good to get that momentum on your side, and it's really good for your confidence as well. The more confident you are, the further that can take you.
Sauber have been winning fans the world over with their brilliant driving, showing that they're a force to be reckoned with out there on the track. They'll certainly be building on that fan base after today's excellent result.
So there we go, 11 different winners, 11 races. It's Valtteri Bottas who's on the podium again, this time on the top step. And yeah, we got Norris in P2, probably kicking himself for losing the lead on the last lap. And then Leclerc just happy to be there in P3, probably. He got very lucky with me making that mistake and costing Verstappen P3. Very unfortunate for Max, but he was there and nothing we can do, really. Sometimes things work out like that. But there we go, after 71 laps of the Austrian Grand Prix, it's Valtteri Bottas who takes the win and the fastest lap. Lando Norris in P2, Charles Leclerc P3, Verstappen in 4th, Oscar Piastri moving from P14 to P5. Very good comeback drive for him. Fellow Aussie Daniel Ricciardo in P6, Magnussen in 7th, Sainz in 8th, Tsunoda, our championship leader, is in 9th, and Lewis Hamilton rounds up the top 10 with 10th, with 1 point. I don't know why I said that. George Russell making his way back up to where he started in P11. I'm sure he'd be very disappointed. He could have done so much more, but he made that silly mistake early on, and that cost him dearly. Alexander Albon finishing P12 with Stroll P13. Sargent in 14th. Sergio Perez having a stinker of a race down in 15th place. Gasly in 16th. Alonso in 17th. Thanks for his front wing damage from the start, but that was his own fault. Esteban Ocon is last to classified finishes in P18. And we had 2 retirements, which was Zhou Guanyu and Nico Hulkenberg, who definitely suffered from Zhou having a lapse of concentration, I feel. And there we go, that is the Austrian Grand Prix done and dusted. Next race is the British Grand Prix around Silverstone in a week's time, the last of the triple header. I do love Silverstone, I can't wait to do this race. Silverstone is definitely one of my favourite tracks. Definitely not British bias. Silverstone is just a banging track in general. I think a lot of people can agree. Silverstone is very good. So, yeah, week's time, which should be the 5th of July. The British Grand Prix video will go up. So, make sure you look forward to that one. Should be very good. As for the standings after the Austrian Grand Prix, Charles Leclerc takes the lead of the championship away from Yuki Tsunoda, with a 9-point advantage going into the British Grand Prix. Max Verstappen only 3 points now behind Yuki Tsunoda in P3, jumping Lewis Hamilton into P4. Norris, his fellow Brit, is now still in 5th with 89 points ahead of Fernando Alonso. Actually, Norris was behind Alonso, so Norris actually did jump Alonso into 5th. Alonso now down to 6th with Oscar Piastri not too far behind him in 7th. Carlos Sainz remains in 8th place, Ricciardo in 9th, and Sergio Perez actually tumbles down to P10. Not very good for the Red Bull driver at all. As for the constructors, we have now Ferrari leading the way with 196 points, ahead of RB, who are now on 183. Red Bull not too far behind their sister team now. They're a 3rd with 179. McLaren actually moving up to 4th place now. Only 15 points behind Red Bull with 164 points. Mercedes slipped down to 5th with 143 points. Not a very good result for them today in Austria after a very good result in Spain. Aston Martin, not very good for them. Only got a few points from the sprint. They remain in 6th and are falling behind the battle for the Constructors' Championship there. In fact, Kick Sauber are closing in the gap between them and Aston Martin with the win and the sprint win from Bottas, meaning they're up to 7th now with 90 points, springing ahead of Williams and Alpine, who are now tied on points in 8th position. And then Haas, despite getting a 7th place of Magnussen today, still in last with 25 points to their name. And there we go. That is the Austrian Grand Prix done and dusted. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like or a comment or subscribe even, because again, we're doing every single race this year, continuing with the British Grand Prix next week. So many more F1 videos to come this year. Hopefully you enjoy them all. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you all next time.